According to the findings of a recent study, in 2020 during the global pandemic, the top 10% actually doubled their income or their net worth, whereas the bottom 90% actually plunged further into debt and into poverty. And there are millions and millions of kids out there who die every single year in the world as a result of poverty and starvation. And sometimes life can actually feel like a treadmill. So you may be making all the necessary sacrifices, committing to your job, doing all the right things. However, you may be stuck in a rat race. That is, having to live to expect the next paycheck. And when it comes around, it's not even enough to pay your bills. In this video, I'll be highlighting 7 key habits that actually get people to get stuck in the rat race, and how, more importantly, you can reverse these habits and then take charge and then steer yourself towards the attainment of financial freedom. The first habit that actually keeps people in a rat race is the habit of trading time for money, and that is, in other words, working a 9 to 5. The average multi-millionaire and several billionaires out there have at least 7 streams of income on average. So what you can do is to find several ways and means of earning money outside your 9 to 5. And the riskiest thing you can do in life, in my opinion, is to work one job without finding several other alternatives to making money. Because not only will inflation make your life unbearable, but actually, if companies are right sizing or downsizing, especially in today's case where there are several economic turmoil and several tariffs ongoing that is increasing the cost of companies' production, it is much more easier for them to do away with you, and that is to cut costs by letting you go. And that would eventually lead to you being unemployed. And then your stream of income, which is the check that you actually expect at the end of the month, would be cut off. That means there's nothing coming in for you and the kids and any other plans that you're looking to set and to achieve in the future. And so the best thing you can do is to find a side hustle or something that will generate some additional income aside your 9 to 5. Now at this point, you can ask yourself the simple question: how do I start a side hustle when I don't have any skill, or I don't even have the time or the money to actually go on to start this? You can ask yourself the simple question: what is the one thing that I'm so good at that people tend to compliment me so much? That is in the family, in your friend circle, and even at work. That thing can actually be a leverage or an unfair advantage that you can leverage on to make some money out of it. So for example, if you're very good at public speaking, you can start a YouTube channel and start teaching people how to speak in public. Or you can set up a class in Skillshare where you give people tips on how to summon the courage to write and then to stand in front of public and then make money through that. You can find several other alternatives as well. Sitting down to ask yourself the simple question: what are the things that I do that I really don't get tired of? And those are your interests. Anytime you build a side hustle around your interest, it is much more easier for you to go on to become successful. Because the reason is simple: it feels like fun and not an additional burden as compared to your 9 to 5. This brings us to the second habit, which is saving instead of investing. I've heard several people out there, sometimes in my friend circle and sometimes even at work, say that they don't want to invest, they rather save. And there's nothing wrong with that. But there's one thing that you need to know: that savings might not necessarily make you rich. And don't get me wrong, let me explain. And the truth is, there is an economic concept known as inflation. And inflation is simply the general rise in the prices of goods and services within an economy. So holding all other factors constant, the prices of goods and services over time, after several years, would go up. But they may not go up just as much as your income would go up. So in other words, if you're to save, then the impact of inflation would wash away all the gains. Or the small interest that you accrue on your savings from the banks by saving with them might not be enough to empower you to make those purchases in the future, simply because the prices of goods will be much more expensive in the near future. And that is where investment comes in. Investing also gives you the opportunity to earn dividend income or interest on your principal, which would in the near future offset and then balance out the impact or the negative impact that inflation would have on your money altogether. This brings us to the third point, which is living above your means or going out of your way to overspend your budget. So one of the basic reasons why people are stuck in a rat race is simply because of lifestyle inflation, or popularly known as keeping up with the Joneses. So they make several purchases that might not fall under the category of needs, but rather wants. So anytime that they go out to spend, they don't have a budget. And of course, they don't stick to the goal of having to discipline themselves to realize that they are able to save something at the end of the day. And that simply stems from one thing. If you don't have the discipline to go out and then get things done in the right order insofar as your finances is concerned, then you might as well sit down to plan and then budget, because that helps you to refrain from making unnecessary purchases and payments. In other words, if you're investing towards, for example, your skills development or anything that is likely to bring you money in the future, then I'm all in for that and I support that. For example, if you're investing in educating yourself, which also holds the potential to return some form of income in the near future, then that is a great thing because you're investing in assets as opposed to liabilities. Now, what you need to know is that anything that takes money out of your pocket is simply a liability, and anything that brings money into your pocket is an asset. So sit down and then analyze where your money is going, and then ascertain whether the things that you're purchasing currently is an asset, that is, it is likely to bring money in your pocket, or likely to take out money from your pocket, which is a liability. And after doing all these things, make sure that you stick to a budget and then ensure that you're disciplined enough to realize your gains, which would eventually help you and empower you to leave the rat race. This brings us to the fourth habit, which is waiting for the best time before taking action. Now, according to Napoleon Hill, one of the most important things that you need to consider if you really want to build wealth and become successful in life is the habit of decisiveness. So he believes that the only difference between the poor and the rich is the ability of the rich to make decisive decisions and to act promptly and then subsequently adjust their sails in the course of the pursuit of their goals. So eventually they may make mistakes, they may be faced with failure, they may be faced with several setbacks, but that doesn't cause them to give up on their goals. Instead, it helps them, it empowers them to fall back on the experience and the knowledge, the skills that they've gained through the failure, to also go on and then do more things based on that knowledge and to become successful in the end. So what you need to know is that there's never the best time for you to do anything. You can start and then over time perfect it as time goes on. That is the most perfect way that you can actually start. For example, when I wanted to start this YouTube channel, I didn't have this professional softbox. I started with just the softbox that I had, which I purchased for, I think, a little under $20, and it wasn't enough. But as I went on with time, I changed my softbox, I changed my microphone, and it's really helped me. Start where you are, start with what you have, and then eventually perfect it, because I believe that that is a requisite condition if you really want to leave the rat race. This brings us to the fifth habit, which is ignoring financial education. Now, Warren Buffett goes on to say that the greatest investment that you can ever make is in yourself. And so if you truly want to leave the rat race, then there's one thing that you need to know. You need to educate yourself. You need to learn how money works, and more importantly, how you would make your money work for you. Not everyone out there would have this knowledge or the ability or the information needed to grow wealth. However, if you subject yourself to studies and to education by reading books, listening to podcasts, and then sometimes even listening to interviews or watching the news, you would eventually be able to familiarize yourself with several other economic and business concepts that would help you to understand how money works and how, more importantly, you can make much more income aside your 9 to 5, which would eventually empower you once again to leave your rat race. This brings us to the sixth habit, which is the fear of failure and the fear of risk. So risk aversion is one of the greatest things that actually stop people from becoming financially free. And so if you really want to leave your rat race, then you might as well take calculated risk in order to steer yourself towards the attainment of your financial goals. Now, what you need to know in this case is that it shouldn't be just any risk. It should be a calculated risk because, mind you also don't want to lose money in the course of the process. So try and then do things that are within your limits and things that wouldn't eventually derail you financially. So for example, there's something called the Goldilocks rule, and it simply says that anytime that you set a goal, try as much as possible and set a goal that is not so far-fetched. And in a like manner, you shouldn't set a goal that is way below your ability, your skill sets, and your talent. So you should set a goal that would eventually just take you slightly out of your comfort zone, but wouldn't also stretch you out so much so that eventually you become stressed and then you give up on the goals altogether. So what you need to know is that risk is one of the greatest ways that you can actually build wealth. So instead of shying away from risk altogether, try and then find ways and means to manage risk, because that is eventually what would make you financially free and then take you out of the rat race. Lastly, you need to consider resentment towards the rich as a habit, because anytime that you hate people who achieve great things in life and people who are more successful than you in life, you're likely to end up stuck in the rat race. And that is simple, because Napoleon Hill believes that whatever the mind can conceive and believe it can achieve, and as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. There are several people out there who believe that wealth is tantamount to greed or tantamount to anything bad in the world. So the rich are greedy, the rich are selfish, the rich are wicked. No, don't get me wrong. It's not all the people that you can actually say do not do all these things. Most rich people are greedy. Most rich people are selfish. Most rich people are evil, in quotes. But the truth is, it's not all of them. And there are justifiable ways that legitimately you can make money. So instead of saying all of them and then generalizing, making a hasty generalization, for example, like all rich people are greedy, you shouldn't actually hold that posture. Instead, what you need to do is that you need to feed your mind and your subconscious mind with positivity. The fact that even though people might be doing all illegalities and be engaged in all kind of evil stuff out there whilst making money, you would come in and sail through the right path, try as much as possible and get things done in a legal and a right manner and still be able to leave your rat race. So what you need to know is that you need to believe that you can make it, and you cannot just make it through any dubious means, but rather through the good and the positive means. And this is a sure way for you to leave your rat race. Now, if you found value with this video, then I'll be shooting several other videos in the near future. So you might consider liking and subscribing to this channel. Thank you, and see you in the next video.